Hello, everyone. It's Tommy Lee Hayes Brown with Rito Recognition. I'm so excited today. We have my friend David Creelman here, and David is the author and strategist, analytic specialist, and CEO of the Creelman Research, which helps countries and companies all over the world elevate their human capital management using the power of analytics, research and development, and leadership training. With decades of experience working with organizations and board of directors that represent almost every industry imaginable, David has been called upon to present his human capital findings all across the world. He's been published in a variety of periodicals and online articles, including People Plus Strategy magazine, HR.com, and Harvard Business Review Online. His co-authored book, Lead the Work, Navigating a World Beyond Employment, is a bestseller and has become a go-to resource for managers around the world. David has his MBA from the University of Western Ontario and a BSc in chemistry and biochemistry from McMaster University. He's won the Walker Award for from HRPS and has been made a fellow for the Center of Evidence-Based Management. David enjoys traveling and has done so extensively around the world and tends to prefer places that are atypical. And sometimes even off the grid. We are thrilled to have him here today and pick his mind about employee engagement, recognition, and what he sees as the future in human capital management. David had the opportunity to visit us at Rito in our Montreal home office, and he'll be sharing what he saw there, as well as providing us with some practical tips and best practices that he's collected from all his travels around the world. Just one housekeeping item before we start the webinar. If you have any questions or comments, please press the button on the left side of your screen and I'll collect them during our conversation. And when we get some, I'll go ahead and bounce them off David. This is really your chance to get some help for your organization from one of the foremost recognition and engagement, analytical and human capital thought leaders. So without further ado, please help me welcome my friend, David Creelman. How you doing, Dave?
I'm great. Thanks. Thanks for seeking me out and inviting me to this. I always enjoy this kind of thing, and the preparation you have been very helpful to me to get this going.
Well, no problem. It's always a joy to share the stage with someone like yourself and really just take advantage, for me personally, to take advantage of all the years of research and data collection and best practices and just what the trends you've seen around the world, not just in North America, but just around the world that may be coming our way or where we may even be ahead of the curve. So let me just start off with asking this, and this is a very loose conversation, and I really want our webinar folks to take advantage of asking you those questions. So again, that button's on the left side of your screen. Go ahead and ask your question or comments, and I'll collect them here, and we'll kind of interject them during our conversation. Let's start with how we met, and that's through Rito Recognition. And you came up to Montreal and you kind of, you talked to and observed some of our best practices. Were there one or two that you thought were outstanding or something that you thought was really, really good that you saw up there with the employees that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, and let me just get it. And the reason I went to Montreal is I was in New York, and in New York, I met your head of analytics. And of course, he's talking he's a PhD at
Charles Sherman. Yes,
so that's right. And okay, so super brainy stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time, I'm kind of in that world dealing with professors and so on at a high abstract level. Anyway, but I was so impressed with what he was doing. I wanted to see Rito Recognition in person. And so I meet Peter Hart, and he starts walking me around the office and the plant there. And what really I found so sort of mesmerizing is how everybody just kind of smiled when they came into the room. So you go into the accounting, all the people just a smile comes on their face.
Mm-hmm.
Walking through and there's somebody working a machine and they wave and they say hi. Everybody he stopped to talk to, not only did he know their name, not just, hey, person who happens to be an employee, he knew their name. He also knew something about them. So we'd be walking away and he'd be saying, Yeah, he just bought a new house in this part of Montreal. Or this other person, yeah, their mom was sick and they took a couple of days off. And so I was so impressed with the fact that he knew so much about each employee, but also, as I say, this sense of happiness. Often when the CEO walks through, people are a little bit nervous or they have a fake smile because they don't want to get in trouble. Uh, but that was the signal. And again, we do all these engagement surveys, right? You don't need an engagement survey. You just look at the faces of the people as the leaders are walking around the operation. Mm-hmm. And that's what I found fascinating. So then the question becomes, well, why is it like this? And I guess that's what led me to want to interview, both the leadership and some of the employees there.
Right. Okay. So, so I'm not going to pretend I know the full answer of why it's like that, but as an employee of Rito and as someone who's known Peter Hart, the president that you're speaking of, it's not an act. So what you witnessed happens every single day in the Rito culture. And Peter knows everyone's name, and not only the name, but the background and who they are. And, how's your mom doing? I heard she was sick. Those types of little touch points, he has a really good understanding of his staff. And it just really makes you feel good, as an employee. And I can speak as an employee. It makes you feel good to know that your manager truly, truly cares about your well-being. So it's not an act. I love the tour that you're talking about. Peter loves it. I've probably done it a half dozen times and just witnessed him doing it. And you're absolutely right. He definitely enjoys what he does. And I think the employees the employees feel that.
And you used the word he really cares. And one of the secrets is it starts from that human emotion of really caring. And again, I'm so used to living in the world of data and analytics and fancy theories and strategic plans and so on. Mm-hmm. You think, okay, so what is driving productivity here? Well, productivity is starting from having developed that sense of care. So that is genuine, and then it shows up in your behavior, and you create opportunities with your processes for it to show up. So for example, it's one thing to have a good feeling in your heart, mm-hmm. but rationalize it in some way. So there are a couple of things that they do is that every time a new employee gets hired, there's what they call an entry interview. So they get to meet the president, sit down, it's not that long, but the focus is on, let me find out about you as a person. And maybe this is one of the really important things, right? A lot of the time we're really focused on, well, what's the job? What are the competencies? What are the company values? Sure, those things matter. And that certainly, Rito does get to that and their HR processes. But the initial point is, what are you like as a person? What are you looking for? What are your aspirations? And they say, let's ground this in the personal relationship. And we'll build the job and productivity and how to do Six Sigma and all that mm-hmm. off of that. But we don't dive into, we don't start with the idea that you're going to be a really productive widget. We're going to start from the basis that you're a human being. You're going to be part of our family. We want to get to know you. Yep. So the entry interview is a process they build in to build that connection between the leadership and the individual. And of course, the person's department manager, you might say, will have a similar meeting. It's not just the president.
Right.
And then and again, okay, how do we process? And then we have a follow-up meeting where they take people, like a group of 6 people roughly. Again, the president, Peter, will take them on a tour of the plant, tell them a bit about the history. Okay, again, not just, well, here's how this works, but let me tell you a bit about where this all came from, and really try to ground them in where the company's come from, what it's achieved, what it's trying to do. So those are a couple of simple things that both illustrates that sense of concern and care for employees, and and make sure it happens, and gives Peter the knowledge. I mean, that he does know about his people and he can react accordingly.
Now, as a manager myself, under our president, when you see your president doing that, you understand as a manager, well, this is the culture that I'm in, and this is what I absolutely have to do to fit into this culture. And so, that kind of comes naturally to me anyway. But I understand that, okay, this is the way this operation works, and I got to get on board. What Peter did for me and made me feel is what I need to do with my peers. So it's that whole top down.
Yeah, and not only like he's role modeling it. Obviously, you were hired because there was a cultural fit there.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing that is that he's giving you permission to do it as well. It's
absolutely.
Sometimes you think, oh gosh, should I be spending some minutes talking to this person about what they did on the weekend, or should I be filling in an accounting report?
Right.
Right. And I don't know if you know Lance, but
I do know Lance.
I think it was he was the one who told me that here's the trick. You're not spending 15 minutes to show you care. You can do it in 2 minutes. You're walking by, you see the person, you take the 2 minutes to say hi. You still have time to do your accounting report. It's not like you're not doing all the other stuff.
Right.
It's the 2 minutes you're spending.
And Lance is a great example, a friend of mine as well. And I see Lance with his team doing the same thing. Just the stop in the hall. Oh, Tommy Lee, I didn't know you were up here this week. How's the family? That type of thing. It makes such a difference in your workplace and how you feel about getting up in the morning. Because, quite frankly, depending on where you are in the world, it may be that war for talent is still going on.
Yeah. And
we as employees have choices. And it's not just about the money. Of course, the bottom layer of your hierarchy of needs has to be, you have to get a paycheck. It's not volunteer work. I have a family to feed. But once you get past that bottom rung or bottom level of your hierarchy of needs, there's lots of choices to work for, and I want to work for a company that encourages my heart where I can fail. I can fail and not feel like, that idea I had that failed, and I'm going to get a pink slip tomorrow, because there's something coming down the pike that I'll suggest that works. And, it's a culture of just being one of the team. You had mentioned Peter mentioned history. And my first day on my first tour, Peter said to me, "What do you think?" And I said, "That's great." He said, "Now you're part of the Rito history." And, I walked away feeling so good about that. This is my first day, my first day of work. And now I'm part of that history. For the president to say that to me was really touched my heart and really made me engaged for day 2.
Yeah, and you see, and this is the thing, we talk about concepts like engagement and commitment, productivity. And what's interesting is when you see it actually, the practices that bring it to life are simple, they're applied in a disciplined way, and they come from the heart. I think that would be what I noticed. And you mentioned, it makes you want to stay in the war for talent.
Yes.
Let's look at the data. Their retention is very good.
Yes.
So that reduces costs, increases productivity. It enables. One of the things it also does is that people get to know the whole operation well enough, and people do a fair bit of internal movement from one job to another, and promotion from within. But it means that you have, in a sense, a very knowledgeable workforce, because they've been there a long time, their coworkers have been there a long time, they know how everything works, and they care about everything. They were telling, somebody told me a story about, for a recognition award that they might produce for another organization. Imagine it's some kind of plaque. And it was coming through, and it was hard to get it lined up. It wasn't quite square. And the person in customer service noticed this. So not someone in manufacturing who's supposed to be, who it's their work, it's somebody else. And she said, this could be better. And so she figured out a way to fix it, and then went back and worked with the people in the plant so they operationalize it, and it gets done all the time. And this is what you want from your employees, that they care enough to really create a quality product, that they're not so stuck in their silos that
Right,
they won't
right.
help,
Mm-hmm.
that they know they'll get a welcome reception. That, here's an idea, it's going to make things better. People aren't going to beat them up and say, hey, go back to your cubicle.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where we start seeing good business outcomes that result from this. It sounds very soft stuff, but it starts soft. It starts with the sincerity and the caring, but you follow that through, and suddenly you start seeing outcomes like improved quality, improved productivity, higher retention, all these, you get this virtual cycle of good things happening.
It's funny you said soft sell, because our first question says, employee recognition and engagement has always seemed to be a want to have and not a need to have. Do you see trends around the world moving in that direction as they are in North America?
Yeah, I don't. This is not from data, so this is just from anecdotes and observation. But I think so. And the shift people need to make is going from just a focus on the idea that's a recognition award, and sort of a focus on the physical award, to recognizing that the award is just the tangible symbol of a culture appreciation. Right. And again, I'm stealing this from you guys, but I'm going to pretend it's my idea. But I think that's really interesting, because a recognition award can be soulless if it comes from a soulless company. And if you just think, okay, I've got some system here, I'll hit a button and somebody will get some little recognition, that's not going to drive engagement in your organization.
Right.
It's that honest feeling. I actually, I genuinely do appreciate the fact that this person is coming in here every day. That is what, and the recognition flows from that. It's not a recognition program isn't a substitution for genuinely feeling appreciation and sort of demonstrating it day to day.
I mean, one of the worst recognitions I've ever had, seen happen to me at a previous employer, where it was my 5th year anniversary. I still remember it. I remember it was my 5th year anniversary, which had to be 20 years ago. And I got a coffee mug and a T-shirt and the iconic stuffed animal, I won't mention the company, sitting on my desk, and it said "Happy Anniversary," and it had Thomas. Well, my name is Tommy. The birth certificate says Tommy. It's not Thomas, but clearly this manager didn't know that, or whoever printed it, and it wasn't presented to me. It was just sitting on my desk when I came in, and I just felt like, wow, okay. I was kind of new in the industry, but it just didn't sit right with me, and I didn't feel appreciated or valued. So something that was supposed to make me feel appreciated and valued had the opposite effect. So you're so right. You really have to make sure that people know you care, because just the token or the branded item or whatever it is, that's all it is. It's the impact or the meaning behind that item that really gets employees engaged.
Yeah, and it's funny, and I bet you would say this as well, or in fact, you really kind of have said it. This is different from other places I've worked. And so this is me, I heard, again, this is different from every place else I've worked, and people had worked at a number of different companies.
Right.
And so I find that interesting, because when you walk around the office, it doesn't look that different, right? I mean, the physical layout and so on, nothing fancy there.
Right.
It's not the Google head office or the Apple UFO or whatever those things are. It's just a regular workplace. So I think, well, what's so different? And the funny thing is, the stories I heard are very similar to the story you mentioned. Like somebody said, when my manager comes by, he stops and shakes my hand and asks how I'm doing. And okay, I want to hear a management theory. Okay, what is it? That's nothing. That must happen everywhere. And they no, it doesn't happen everywhere. They say I've been where I worked before. I'd be there, and the manager or one of the leaders would be walking by, and they didn't look at me any more closely than they'd look at the mop leaning up against the wall. You know,
Yeah.
I just wasn't there. Um, and this is, I mean, again, this is what really strikes me, because again, you look at the manufacturing systems that they use, and they have all the usual, you know, Japanese inspired processes for quality, and you know, then they track you know, you can see on the wall how well they're doing, all those usual things. uh, and you're looking for, well, like, do they have an artificial intelligence tool or advanced robotics or something like that?
Right.
No, what's making the difference is that that we're seeing this human behavior, and strangely enough, this is not universal. In fact, it's not even common. And and that's why it's so easy to overlook, because, you know, if I come in as a management consultant and I say, okay, well, you know, I've done all this study and I talked to 10 different PhDs, and what you need to do is when you walk by somebody, say hello to them, nod, hopefully you know their name. And that's going to be foundational in all these other programs you have for continuous improvement, or you know, quality management, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, people are not excited when if that's your advice, that's the best advice I have to offer. It seems so simple, but I say, but you know, you got to grab the person and say, well, are you doing it? And probably not.
Right. Absolutely. And you just, as an employee, you kind of know, because not, you know, not every manager, a lot of us got promoted because we were technically sound.
Yeah.
So we got results from our organization. It's like, oh, you know, hey, Tommy Lee, we're going to promote you to manager. Well, Tommy Lee may not know anything about engagement or encouraging the heart, or, you know, providing a culture that celebrates wins and even celebrates, you know, the losses or things that didn't work, because we tried it and now we know that doesn't work and we're going to move on. Carla just wrote, she said, can all this be taught? What if you weren't born to know about recognition and the tools that takes to make your employees feel valued?
Oh, I absolutely, I think it can be taught, and I think it's relatively easy. You know, for some, like, some people are naturals, they're born with it. That's fine, and some people are, you know, they may be a little bit shy, a little bit less inclined to do it. But what we're asking of people is not that demanding. We're you know, stop, take an interest in people, ask a few questions. And one of the things too, by the way, is that once you get over that first hurdle, like let's talk about the entry interview. So let's imagine you have an organization and your boss role models the entry interview for you. You know what it is. You get to see, okay, this is the expectation. Then when you do it with your new employees, you actually do get to know them as a person. And that makes it much easier, even if you're not a particularly social person. Now you've got something to work from, because in that entry interview, you did learn something about that individual. It does
Right.
make it easier for you to stop by for the 2 minutes again, right? We're not talking, everyone's got work to do. You're going to stop by for 2 minutes and show you care. Backed up by a recognition program. Well, you know, funny, another thing they mentioned, that people like barbecues. You know, people at Rideau like the social events.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not expensive to do, not hard to do, but it's all part of supporting that those relationships, so that it becomes easy for people to talk to each other.
Yes.
Easier for them to win together, easier for them to overcome setbacks together.
Absolutely. And it just creates, as you were saying, a tightly bonded unit. So when things do go astray, which they will, with the company and individually, you know, medical emergency, or I got to be out a month, you know, which actually just happened to me. I know my team's got my back.
Yep.
You know, and I know that my boss isn't counting every little hour I'm away, because, you know, because she knows that when push comes to shove and we got a big project, I'm there. You know, I was there working the weekend too. So it's just, you know, give and take, treating the golden rule, treat people the way you want to be treated. Right.
Yeah.
I have a question, as far as, you what you've seen in the industry, how has it changed over the, let's say, 10, 20 years? I mean, you've been so entrenched and involved
Yeah.
in the industry. I mean, where, for example, my father, who worked, he was born in 1944. So when I tell him about employee recognition and engagement, I told him I got this new job. He was like, well, isn't your paycheck employee recognition and engagement? Like, what do you mean? Like, I had to really sit down and discuss with him what that meant. And he's like, well, in my day, I would have loved to have a great paycheck. Could feed my family and a gold watch when I retired, and I was good to go. I don't understand you. And and now I sound like that with my teenage sons, because they want all these other, this job's offering free dry cleaning and I can bring my dog to this job. And I'm like, what? So as the generations, my son, myself, and my father, we have three separate, totally ideas about the workplace. I'm just wondering if you've seen the same thing, or maybe you haven't over the past.
By the way, it's well worth knowing that you run into those attitudes a lot, where a manager might think, I shouldn't have to show recognition. Like it's funny, they resent showing recognition. And that's something, if people believe that deeply and you're a high engagement company, they're probably not a good fit to be a manager at your company. If it's
right.
I think a lot of people can learn their way out of that. And they can.
I like how you put that, learn their way out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
But getting back to your point, I mean, in the workplace itself, the day-to-day hecticness, and I think it's a lot of it's a result of email and texting and all this kind of stuff. But the workplace is incredibly hectic now, and I've noticed that in my lifespan very much. And I remember the days when, back before everything was done with email, you'd send something off, and be a physical letter or something, and then you could sit back and you go, you know what? Well, nothing's going to happen with that for a week, and I can kind of relax. And so that puts people under constant stress. So that's hard thing in the workplace. And again, and you can see how that distractedness can make it harder to be a good manager. I see the so many people move jobs quickly. People are in there for a couple of years and they're looking on to the next job, and sometimes that can create a real lack of stability in the organization where nobody is on the team, has been on the team for more than a few years. And that can, again, make it a difficult working environment because nobody really is committed to the company. They're just there for a stint and then they're off someplace else. So those are the two big changes I would say I've seen. And I suppose on the flip side of people not being there that long is the feeling that the company might not allow them to be. There'll be some reorganization, downsizing, who knows what, merger, demerger. People don't have that sense of security. But maybe this is why people are paying more attention to the soft skills, because maybe the old deal was a little bit more, look, if not a job for life, you're here for a good long time.
Right.
So we don't have to show that much love to you because you're, and so now, people talk, engagement has gone from being a word nobody knew to something that every company values. So many organizations are pursuing things like Best Place to Work awards. Companies have people responsible for inclusion. And inclusion, some people, it's not just about diversity. Inclusion is about everybody feeling they can be their best at work.
Right, absolutely.
And so all these things have become mainstream, and it's interesting how global it is. There are cultural differences, but by and large, managers study at they read the same books, ideas travel very quickly, and you find most of these trends, if it's happening in the US, it's probably happening in Brazil, and it's probably happening in Singapore as well.
I was just writing down, we got another question. I can't pronounce your name, I'm sorry. I'll just call you Jay. It starts with a J. Jay says, how does engagement transcend into results? Because bottom line, aren't companies here to make money?
Yeah, and when you talk, I think that's a really important question, because if you're not focused on the results, then you won't get sustainable support for this. And in the
So it can't be all fun and games and talking at the water cooler for an hour about last night's show. And, like you said, 2 minutes, an investment of 2 minutes, you got to have results or else we won't be here.
That's right. And it's funny, a lot of the recognition awards and ceremonies, it's not recognition for being such a lovely human being. It's recognition because you hit your targets.
Right.
Here was a customer who was mad, and you went in and you won them over again. You got the sale. You fixed the conveyor problem. I mean, it's all tangible things. And the reward ceremonies, it's not just a pat on the back, isn't this a wonderful person? It's a chance to illustrate these are the kind of behaviors that are going to make the organization successful.
Right.
And if you look at all the manufacturing methodologies, they all rely on worker involvement. I mean, workers have to buy into this is how we're going to do things. And one thing that I have to look up, because the French term and a French method that I'm not familiar with, but basically it involves a system for moving people around the operation to deal with where the need is greatest. So it's not that everybody's just in their little stand and they're stuck there. If suddenly you need people over in shipping, the system is set up that we can move people who are not fully busy at their normal job to help with the shipping. Mm-hmm. So that sounds like great. Sounds like a really smart system where we move resources where they're needed. That system doesn't work if you don't have committed, engaged employees. And so all this engagement stuff is not just for the sake of engagement. This is where HR can go off track. If HR is focusing too much just on the, getting the score or getting the award,
right.
HR really has to understand how the business operates and what does the business need to do to achieve results, and make sure that the whole engagement side really aligns with that. And I would say in the case of Rito, there are two things. One is this idea of customer first. Again, it's not a new idea, but they take it very seriously, that everybody knows we absolutely have to keep the customer happy. And this is where you hear stories of people doing sort of heroic things like, getting in their car and driving an award to somebody who's in a hospital who wouldn't be able to get it otherwise, And again, that's not, why does that work? It's because it's on the employee initiative. Why does the employee care about the customer? Because the management has cared about them. So here we're seeing outstanding customer service, which leads to higher profits. What is it driven by? It's driven by an employee who cares. Why does an employee care? It's driven by the engagement strategy. And what is the engagement strategy? It's not something you hire a big consultancy to tell you about. It's spending time with people and caring about them and talking to them when you walk by. When you're having another person mentioned that at a former company, they had a big town hall. So everybody had been busting their gut to hit certain targets, late shifts, extra work, all this kind of stuff, just to make it. And at the end, in the town hall, the manager got up, or the president got up, and he said, "I want to thank all the managers for hitting these targets."
Oh,
and all the workers are saying, what am I? Why was I working? You don't even know I exist. Anyway, but your engagement strategy, we show people we care. How do we show them we care? Well, at the very least, we're in a town hall. We mention them. We call them up on the stage. We mention specific stories. not that complicated, but a lot of people don't do it. And maybe, you know, if you're thinking, well, what in HR is my role in my engagement program? Part of your role is just to continually remind the leadership and managers how much these things matter.
That is so true. That is so true. You know, and you know, going back to that question about, you know, can it be taught? And going back to your comment that, you know, it doesn't take a lot to learn, or what was it? Learn out of those old behaviors.
Yeah.
The phrase you used. Real life example at consulting with a manager who wasn't getting good results. You know, hold on, Tommy Lee. Let me take this call. This is my son. He's just calling to tell me he got home safely. And so she's on the phone. Oh, and how did the game go? Oh, really? What was your contribution? You did? Isn't that the thing you were working on? And you did it? Oh, that is so great. I'm so proud of you. Yeah, we'll get pizza tonight. All right, thank you. She's like, and I don't know how to recognize people, Tommy Lee. I don't know. I said, you just did it. You were specific about the action. You know, you were enthusiastic about the result. And now the pizza is going to be his reward. It's the exact same model. I mean, that was the perfect employee recognition. What you just did was exactly what we're asking you to do. Light bulb moment for her, because she just never even thought what she was doing with her kid is exactly what I was asking her to do with her staff.
Yes.
And so, like you said, it's not complicated. And a lot of people do it anyway. They just turn it on and off sometimes. You know, when they go to work, they're in one frame of mind. When they come home, they're in another frame of mind. And, you know, it was a light bulb moment. And her results were so much better that following quarter because, you know, she had that epiphany that that's all it takes. You know, that's all it takes. We have one more question. So far. And if you do have more questions or comments, go ahead and do them. And if we don't get them today, this is going to be a 2-part series, I'm happy to say. We'll be back same time next week with David. And I have a feeling it won't be the last time we're with him either. So just go ahead and keep your comments coming. I'll collect them and we'll make sure I'll either forward them on to David so he can be prepared for next week, or we'll just go ahead and talk about them then. But Casey says, I'm one of those technical people that is now managing people that Tommy Lee mentioned. Is there anything I should focus on first? What would you recommend Casey focus on? She's a technical person that's now managing people.
Yeah, and I would say the first thing to do is try to get to know them as individuals. Mm-hmm. So find, and if you're interested, a good place to start is to ask them about their interests and their aspirations. You know, what kinds of things are you interested at work, outside of work? And from there, not only does that provide you the starting point for sort of future conversations, it's something to build on. So it's kind of the entry point. You can also begin to understand their motivations. And that's what's really important as a manager, is you begin, okay, yeah, I know where you're coming from. I know the kind of thing you like to do. I know the kind of things that you know, get you excited. So you begin to it gives you a place to work from. So I would say interests and aspirations. And the aspirations can, sometimes people say, no, I'm just happy doing what I'm doing, but sometimes they'll surprise you. And if you know, then that's all the better.
Perfect. I think that's a great question to end on. You know, looking forward to the future and just you know, just one little step, one little movement in the right direction to get yourself, Casey, to get yourself on the right foot. I think your new department will appreciate that you're taking an interest in who they are, how they want to be recognized. Not everybody wants a bunch of fanfare. You know, some people, you know, just want, you know, good pat on the back and they are good. They're happy and that's all they want. You know, so just finding out stuff like that. What are your aspirations? Where do you see yourself? You know, how can I help you get to your next step? You know, and that might even be like, I don't want a next step. You know, I love this customer service job and that's all I'm trying to do right now. That's where my head is. It might change in 5 years, but right now this is where I want it. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, not everybody wants to be the CEO of the company. So great question, Casey. Appreciate you bringing that up. David, this has been a pleasure. Any parting words? How do we reach out to you? How does
All right. Well, I'm going to see if I can. We're going to check
talk
my
to you?
my technical skills here, and you can tell me if you're seeing this or not.
Yes. Yep. Perfect.
All right. So, but I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm easy to contact. There's my email, D Creelman for David Creelman at creelmanresearch.com. So yeah, I'm always happy for questions or comments, or just, as I say, if you don't have any question or comment, but you just don't want to lose me, feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, David. And we'll talk to you in part 2 of this series. And I just so appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be with me today. And more importantly, our webinar audience. I know they appreciate it as well. So thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Tommy Lee. And boy, you're a great collaborator on this topic in particular.
Well, one thing I like to talk and I like to talk to interesting people. So yeah, we're checking all the boxes today. All right. All right. Take care. Let's talk to you next time.